Hello, friend. Welcome to another Mount Rushmore of Everything video. Today, we are talking about U.S. cities. That is the United States of America cities. I think there are two really obvious non-negotiables, and I'll go with what the first one is.
I say that.
Which is the second most populous city on the planet. Most populous U.S. city. It is probably the most iconic U.S. city. When you think of the Statue of Liberty, when you think of Ellis Island, when you think of the World Trade Center, the Empire State Building, so many iconic things are all, Times Square.
Grand Central Station.
Broadway. Of course, you know by now we are talking about New York City.
Yes, sir. When I went there, I felt like I was in a movie.
Yeah.
But then I felt like
So
I
many
already
movies are there.
knew where I was going. That's how famous that city is.
For sure.
It's like you don't feel lost. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to Grand Central Station. Oh yeah, we're going to Times Square. And then you just...
Central Park.
Central
Park. That's another thing,
Yeah.
It's actually the most featured city in TV and movies.
Oh.
Also most visited city by foreigners. Second largest economic center in the world next to
Tokyo.
Yep. It's the home of the Yankees. Worth some bonus points. One of the most iconic sports teams in general. Certainly the most iconic American baseball team. Most powerful global U.S. city as well. So it has the most influence on the globe as a whole. Just the most obvious of obvious. Next one. We'll probably agree on this one.
Well, yeah, because
it's pretty obvious.
It is. You have...
I think. I don't know.
East Coast,
depending on what you're about to say.
New York City, West Coast, of course.
L.A.
Los Angeles. Yeah, the city of angels. A lot of people living there.
Second most populous.
Okay.
Next only to New York.
They are a big boost for the economy with all the industry that is based there.
Third largest economic center after Tokyo and New York City.
And talking about...
in the world.
Talking about, obviously, Hollywood.
Never was Hollywood ever less than 90% of the whole world's box office revenue until 1996. And then it was never less than 80% of the world's revenue until 2015. And then last year, which was 2019, was its least ever, still having a whopping 71.8% of all revenue coming from simply Hollywood within LA, which is crazy.
And they
the Hollywood sign, right? That's iconic.
Right. Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with the palm trees.
Yeah.
Walk of Fame.
The
Walk of Fame. The Chinese Theater. All the big premieres, they have them there. Disneyland.
And Universal Studios. Both the actual Universal Studios and the theme park. One of the two.
Well, and then just how many other movie studios are there. But then when you think also music, so a lot of the entertainment is the heart of entertainment.
Sure. Between LA and New York, you've got a lot of it.
Right. But then usually... if you start in New York, you end up in LA anyways. You must end up in LA.
Because you have to end up in the entertainment capital of the world, right?
For example, Seinfeld, which took place in New York, but it was filmed in LA.
Which is so
and
funny.
they recreated a whole street of New York there
just
in a
for that
set.
Show?
Just for the show. My third one is in between West and East.
So would you say it's central?
You know, not necessarily central, but... is there, but it's Chicago.
Which is the third most populous city.
Big city, a lot of iconic things in there. You have the bean.
Gotta love that bean.
The mirror bean.
Yep.
One way that I saw this was coming from the outside, you know, growing up in Mexico, and then just what an icon would be of, in this case, a city. And when you look at the United States and what cities are relevant and what cities cause a buzz. You know, I had family in California and I always heard of New York, but then after that, I just started thinking, what else? For me, it was obviously Chicago. There are a lot of things that come out of there. Some of them not very positive ones, like all the
most cities.
The gangster culture, you know, back in the 20s with all the alcohol bans that they had, and you had the Untouchables and Elliot Ness. Then you have, for example, the Cubs, the Chicago Cubs. Big baseball team. So anyway, there it is. Chicago.
Which is not on my list.
Well, that's because you know nothing.
Wow, all right. I understand the selection of Chicago. Okay. It is. I feel like I had three fighting over that last spot, and that was one of them. I'll talk more about why I actually left it off in the snubs video. Next one I want to talk about is one that I struggled with at first until I realized I was accidentally penalizing it for the very thing that I didn't want to include it for, which is the capital. So I had a lot of questions, like, is it technically a city? The answer is actually yes, it is technically a city, which was my first struggle, because it's kind of one of those weird things where it's like almost its own state, but it's not.
It's in my Mount Rushmore also.
All right.
And I struggle with that. Is it a city or not?
Yes. The other thing is the general questions, right? What is it that is worth points and how many points in this Mount Rushmore discussion? And at the end of the day, the amount of iconic historical and non-historical, like present day government things that are in DC is just insurmountable. I mean, the White House alone is worth a lot of points, but also Congress. Also, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, Jefferson Memorial, Arlington National Cemetery, Smithsonian, the Veterans Memorial, specifically the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, which is extremely well known, the National Air and Space Museum. So there's just so many things. And I didn't weigh population too heavily. It's the 20th most populous city, which is actually higher than I thought it would be.
Wow.
So yeah, it ended up making the cut for me.
Okay. Yeah.
So next one, which is the last one for me and our last one in general, it is impossible to go through American history class without hearing this state over and over and over again, and specifically this city over and over and over again, and it is Boston. And before anybody cries foul and says, well, you're from New England, you're from Massachusetts, of course you say that. I am the first person in line to say Boston is an overrated city. I don't even really like Boston that much, if I'm being honest. I grew up 50 minutes from it. Don't care for it. I do appreciate the history, which is why it's on the list. And I do think it is a great city, even if me personally, what I like in a city, it doesn't have.
Elevated and just bam.
Yeah, I can't make my New England brethren too happy for too long, because they already have enough happiness with all their sports teams. They don't need more. I felt that it was inarguably the most important historically. I mean, first public library, first subway system, first public school, first public park, Faneuil Hall, Marketplace, the Paul Revere House, Old North Church, Boston Harbor, Fenway Park. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I also sort of give some bonus points for Lexington and Concord and things like that, because all of those are suburbs of Boston. If not technically, they are basically. And this is as a person, too, who is sick and tired of all you people that are like, oh, well, you're from Massachusetts. You're basically Boston, right? No.
You love that.
Not all of Massachusetts is Boston. A very small amount, area-wise, is Boston. It drives the rest of us from Massachusetts crazy. I live 50 minutes from Boston. It is not a suburb of Boston. If you notice, I don't talk with a Boston accent because I don't tell you to park your car. I tell you to park your car. Not from Boston. Just saying. All of that being said, as far as historical significance, it is hard to beat. It is worth some points that they have some of the most iconic U.S. sports teams. So take the Red Sox. I would argue they are probably the second most iconic next to the Yankees. The Bruins have the fourth most Stanley Cups, one of the most iconic teams, one of the original teams, one of the original 6, I believe. The Celtics, most championships of any. And I would argue, again, top 2 most iconic, them and the Lakers. So again, sports teams, this is sort of a minor detail to me. History is the big one, but I think this adds some points too. Just because people from other nations would hear of these sports teams more likely than some other sports teams which they would associate with Boston. For what it's worth, it's also the 21st most populous city with 702,000. And then also it always punches above its weight globally. So if you look at the stats of like significant as a world player versus how many people are actually there, it always is like top 3, top 5 for the United States, even though its population is much less. I mean, it has the iconic colleges, right? Like MIT, maybe greatest engineering school on the planet, certainly in the United States. Harvard, right? Some of the best healthcare on the planet is also there. So there's just a lot that Boston does specifically well, even modern day, which is why I give them credit. Be sure to let us know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video. And If you made it all the way to this point in the video, we want to say thank you. We're glad that you were willing to give up 10, 15 minutes of your day in order to join us in the discussion.
I would watch it to this point.
Good for you, Carlo. Good for you. We will talk to you next time.
They have a huge fan base.
They do have a huge fan base for perennial.
That's what I meant to say. Band face, I say.
Band face. Maybe top 5 most iconic, even that. Probably not. But they're no Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Am I right, Patriots fans? See, now they like me again.